Before the world had names, there was only silence. The earth was young and wild, caught between fire and frost, a restless sphere where oceans boiled beneath storm clouds and glaciers crept across the land like living things. The sky was heavy with ash, the air sharp enough to cut, and lightning tore through the endless night, as if the heavens themselves were trying to awaken creation. It was a world without mercy, and yet within that chaos something fragile began to stir. A spark of warmth, a breath of life, a promise of endurance. From that spark came movement, the first shapes of humanity, small and trembling beneath the shadow of giants. They walked across the frozen plains with nothing but instinct and fire inside their hearts. The earth did not welcome them. It tested them. The cold bit deep, the beasts hunted, and the hunger never left. But still they walked on. They left behind no monuments, no names, only footprints and ashes, whispers of defiance against a world that wanted them gone. They were not strong, they were not fast, but they endured. And endurance was everything. For countless winters they survived in silence, until one storm changed everything. Lightning struck stone and the darkness shattered. A spark leapt from the earth, trembled, and came alive as fire. At first they feared it, this wild, breathing thing that danced and devoured. But slowly they reached toward its warmth, eyes wide with wonder. The cold retreated. The night grew gentle, and humanity saw light, not from the sky, but from its own hands. That moment changed the world forever. Fire became more than survival. It became faith. It burned away fear and gave birth to imagination. It was the first teacher, the first God, the first mirror. Around it they laughed, they shared, they dreamed. In that circle of flame, mankind discovered itself. With fire came courage, and with courage came hunger. They learned to hunt not as beasts, but as thinkers. They studied the wind, the snow, the rhythm of the herd. They moved as one, each gesture a language, each breath a command. The hunt became a ritual, not of blood, but of balance. When the mammoth fell, they bowed in respect. Their gratitude whispered into the frozen air. They learned that survival was not victory, it was a pact, a promise between life and death, giving and taking, creation and loss. When hunger was sated, they gathered together around the fire and found something even greater than strength, belonging. In that fragile warmth, they learned to be human. They shared stories before there were words, teaching with gestures and eyes. They laughed, they mourned, they sang to the flames. Around that circle, the first families were born. The tribe became their world, a fortress made not of stone, but of love and memory. For the first time, they lived not only for survival, but for each other. Necessity became imagination. Stones became blades, bones became hammers, wood became shelter. Each creation a small rebellion against extinction. Their hands grew skillful, their minds sharper, their courage louder. Every spark from flint was progress. Every shelter raised was a declaration. They were learning that the world could be shaped, that power did not only belong to the storm or the beast, but to them. They were no longer passengers in nature's fury. They were its students, and one day they would become its masters. But creation has a shadow, and even the warmest fire can burn. As tribes grew, so did envy. What had once been shared, the flame, the food, the shelter, became worth fighting for. The first wars were not for conquest, but for survival. Spear met spear beneath red skies, and the snow turned black with smoke. When it ended, there were no victors, only survivors. They buried their dead beneath frozen stones and stared into the embers of their fires, realizing that the same hands that build can also destroy. And still life went on. Even sorrow could not silence the will to endure. As time passed, the noise of battle gave way to quiet reflection. They began to look upward, past the mountains, past the stars. They saw meaning in the wind, purpose in the rivers, spirits in the flames. They did not yet have gods, only wonder. But wonder became belief, and belief became the soul of humanity. They painted their faith on stone, red and black. Stories of beasts, of storms, of birth. Each mark a prayer, each line a memory. And within those painted walls the human spirit took root. Faith gave way to creation. Creation gave way to legacy. They carved homes into cliffs, raised stones to honor their dead, built circles that would outlast their own lives. Smoke curled toward the heavens, carrying their gratitude into the cold sky. They were no longer content to survive. They wanted to be remembered. Every tool, every wall, every story carved in bone whispered the same truth. We were here. Curiosity became their second fire. They watched the stars, tracing their movements across the heavens. They learned that the world followed rhythm, that the sun returned, the rivers rose, the herds migrated. They began to predict, to prepare, to plan. The beasts still hunted, the storms still came, but humanity no longer trembled. They had found wisdom, a power greater than any weapon. The world was no longer chaos, but a teacher. And they listened. The earth itself began to change. The ice retreated. The rivers broke free, roaring across the valleys. Forests rose where glaciers once ruled. The sky grew blue again. The air softened. And for the first time the world breathed warmth. The great beasts of the Ice Age, the mammoths, the saber-toothed cats, the titans of old, faded into memory. But their strength lived on in us, in our bones, in our stories, in the dreams of the children who looked to the horizon and saw possibility instead of fear. The cold had forged humanity's body. The fire had shaped its soul. Together they created balance. We were born of opposites, endurance and curiosity, fear and faith, ice and flame. Every tool we hold, every light we ignite, every word we speak carries the echo of that ancient world. Even now, in the heartbeats of cities and the glow of our fires, the memory remains. The Ice Age never truly ended. It became a part of who we are. We carry its lessons in our blood, the instinct to gather, to protect, to survive, to dream. The world we know today was born from that frozen crucible. It was shaped by those who refused to vanish, by those who turned struggle into strength and chaos into creation. They were not gods, not heroes, not kings. They were people afraid, cold, hungry by fire, but unyielding. And because of them, we are here. The frost has melted, the fires have dimmed, but their story still burns within us. Every dawn we witness is a reflection of theirs. The first dawn, the frozen dawn, the moment the earth awoke and humanity opened its eyes. It was not the end of the Ice Age, but its greatest gift, the birth of us. This is the story of how we began, the story of the cold that tested us, and the fire that defined us, the story of endurance, imagination, and the eternal will to survive. We are the children of frost and flame, the proof that even in the harshest darkness light can be made. This is the frozen dawn.